Good morning, First Covenant Church. It is February 6th of 2022. I am Bruce Balgaard, the Director of Worship here at First Covenant Church. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm going to take a little different approach to what we're doing this morning, and you'll find out as we go. But I wanted to start off just by giving you an overview of the month of February and what we have coming up. This is airing at 10 a.m. on Sunday, February 6th. Simultaneously, we are also meeting in person in room 250/270, second floor of the education wing of the building, to have a discussion. And so I hope that you're actually in person and I'm seeing you in real time in real life. But I wanted to provide a video to go along with it just to keep our online community engaged and informed. Quick overview, next couple weeks, February 13th and the 20th, we decided to have some interviews with outside voices. The first one being Norm Blagman, who's been a friend of mine for a long time. He used to operate our homeless shelter, also has been a worship leader, a worship pastor in several churches. You'll get to know Norm more next week, but look forward to that. Once again, that'll be, we'll have an in-person at 10 a.m. What we're looking at is we believe we will make a video of the interview and show that online, as well as showing it in person at 10 a.m. at the church, and then have Norm available for question and answer and discussion. So as you'll see, there's a theme in February around discussing and listening and talking, indeed. Same thing's going to happen on the 20th. I just need to firm up who that is, but it looks like it's going to be someone very wonderful, and I can't wait to firm it up. So that'll be another interview with discussion to follow. Be in person again to do questions and answers and discussions following it. And then on the 27th, we will have a worship service here at the church with a guest speaker that we're still figuring out who we will have as our guest speaker, but stay tuned for that. Not sure what the online presence will be for that day. So, boy, if you could come down, I hope you come down in person to all of these, but especially on the 27th, just trying to figure out what we will do for online on that Sunday. March plans, we don't know. That's why we are stopping and we are asking questions and just doing an assessment of where we're at before we move into March. And so that's where stay tuned. Which leads me to today and what I want to talk about in this video. So as you know, there's been a lot of changes that's happened at First Cov, and there's lots of church business and church planning that we need to do. But what I want to do today, and this is what I want to bring in person to, and what I think we need to do this month, is that we need to look at the issues that our particular church has right now and come up with plans and answers and directions. But I think that we would make a big mistake if we didn't take into account the different context that our world is than it was before COVID and leading up into it. And so that's what I want to do today is just lay down, I call it my layers talk. Just so you know, I will paint in broad brush strokes as I go, and I won't have a lot of nuance in how I present things. That hopefully will stir you up to say, actually, that's good. So this is in no way a teaching. This is more of a time to lay down some groundwork that will actually inspire you to come up with your ideas and how you view things. So if you would allow me, I'm going to start with some layers of complication and changes that have happened that create a completely different context that we find ourselves in here, February of the year 2022. I'm going to start way back. I think it's really important to start way back, and that is that there's been a big shift from the builder generation to the boomer generation as far as how church, the role that church plays in our society. My dad was born in 1920. He died in 2009. Grew up on a farm in northern Minnesota, farmed with horses because tractors were just becoming available. So that's not my grandpa, that's my dad. Okay? A lot of changes happened between my parents' generation and my generation. So let's start there. And one of the big shifts regarding what we're talking about is that church, as I grew into an adult, became less of a given of the fabric of our society like it was for my parents, and going way back to Trondheim, Norway, where the Balgaard farm was. Church was the center point, the hub of community, of coming together, of shared values. But in my generation, as you know, in the rebellious 60s and 70s and 80s, I followed a Christian path, it very much was a choice that a lot of other of my friends and people my age decided that they aren't going to have church be a part of their fabric of life. And that was brand new. That was a huge shift. The church was becoming decentralized as a place that all gathering happened. Obviously, that has increased, and it was while I was on staff at Church of the Open Door, late 1990s into the early 2000s, that there was books like Blue Like Jazz and Brian McLaren's books and just all kinds of new thought around discussing how this new church was going to emerge and a different type of church. And that sort of happened and yet got stuck in the process, but there's a major shift going on in church around the globe, huge shift, that we need to start with that. Church isn't this thing that people automatically think, oh, I need to buy a house, get a job, find a church. That went away. That is gone, and it's being disintegrated more and more. So it's just another option of a way to connect. It is not a given that we're supposed to be a part of that, even if we say that we believe in God or identify as a Christian. Got to start there. The next layer of complexity that I think we need to look at is the growing nationalism that has split our country and splits our church. Conservative versus progressive, however you want to say that. We were working on becoming a racially diverse church, diverse in age as well. And what really was a huge difficulty was when we got to human sexuality and our desire progressively to be inclusive made us split and made it very, very difficult. And so we were in the middle of that. Then the country was in the middle of that. The election of Donald Trump in 2016 really highlighted what has been going and building in our nation. And I think it really sped up that process of kind of the blinders were taken off of how different we are becoming kind of two different ideologies in our nation. And then for us particularly, that culminated in the summer of 2019 when the Evangelical Covenant Church had us removed from the denomination because of our inclusive stance on human sexuality. So we've got church diminishing just as a society. It's not a given that you're going to go to a church. Then this split that if you decide and see yourself with your own set of values as being more progressive, well, there's another split, right? In churches and in our country, and which then split us off of a denomination. Okay, another layer of this growing nationalism and the split around conservative, progressive. And then in the midst of that, in the spring of 2020, landed COVID, a global pandemic. And I believe, this is one of the two big ones that have landed and is creating a completely different context in our world. It was March 22nd of 2020 when First Cov switched to just online-only videos, a whole new way of life, a whole new and fearful way of life. So we were jumping into that, obviously just so different. I remember wiping my groceries off with like bleach water and all, just a completely different world. And then, so we'll talk about that more, the COVID layer, but the COVID thing obviously just changes everything. The context is huge. And then, as you know, on Monday, May 25th of 2020 was the murder of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police. Thursday, May 28th, burning of many buildings, including the 3rd Precinct Police Station. And Sunday, May 31st of 2020, troops were deployed into Minneapolis, and there was barbed wire and U.S. National Guard and plywood on windows, and we were in a completely different world. Speed ahead a little bit. The election happened, which then led to the January 6th insurrection on the United States Capitol. Folks, it's a different world that we find ourselves in. This is a huge bunch of complexity and difficulty and newness that if we don't take into account as we wonder about what's next for this church, we will not be able to come up with very helpful answers. I do want to say, too, that there's things that we learned during COVID that actually were beneficial. We learned that our lives, many of our lives were out of balance. We were just too busy. I know that I talked with musicians that this past summer when COVID was at a lull, gigs just blasted off again. And the story I heard over and over again was that musicians recall being as busy as they were getting once again in this past summer. And they were like, I can't figure out how I was able to survive that amount of busyness. And so I'm reducing the gigs that I take. I mean, everyone was really saying, I can't go back to that thing that, before the pandemic, we just kept adding and adding and adding and adding. And when you just add, one grain of sand at a time, you don't notice the accumulation that's built up. But COVID was this huge reset. And so we're realizing, I don't want to make those same mistakes again. And so we're really looking at life completely different. We were forced into simplicity and learned that there were aspects of that simplicity that we wanted to keep. We learned about being isolated. I'm an outgoing introvert, and so I was very easily adapted to the isolation, but I had to learn the fact that introverts need people too, and where that was more automatic, I had to work on that. And then another huge one is we learned how to use technology as a form of broadcasting programming to a specific audience. So obviously we knew about broadcasting through television and even through the internet, but it was this event of COVID that had us, especially churches, be able to reach out specifically to our congregation. Obviously others could watch too, which adds another layer of complexity, but we were able to make direct connections through video, and then also with Zoom, FaceTime, other things like it, but also experiencing this whole new way of being together, real time, but staring at a computer screen. Unbelievable change and difference. And so, this past fall, as we tried to re-engage in-person worship services, we realized quickly that it is a completely different world with just the landscape is all new. And the layers of complexity that it has brought into this world is really difficult to understand. And so that's what we want to talk about. We don't want to operate without the realization of this new context. It just will lead us to, I think, really frustrating conversations or expectations that are unrealistic. This is a time to take a very sobering look at where the church is in the 21st century, in the year 2022. I mean, as I revisit the saying that we have come to know here at First Covenant Church as our desire is that we want to create a diverse, inclusive, multi-generational, urban Christian community. Consider all the layers that we just talked about And let me add one more layer of complexity. Now we have to do it in two different ways as a church, basically. That we need to be multi-platform, meaning that we have to start meeting in person again. The isolation, we just have to figure out how to move into a post-COVID world so that we can be together person to person again. It needs to happen. It's happening at 10 a.m. here at First Covenant Church every Sunday, beginning today. But then, are we going to leave behind the people that we have accumulated around the nation that connect with us through the internet? At a time when funding is low and manpower is very low. So what I want to do is to ask you folks that are actually watching this, would you please let us know what this online presence means to you? Part of the problem is that we really don't know. I'm talking to a camera. There's no human in this room. I'm speaking, even though I'm looking you in the eye, I have no idea who I'm talking to. Would you please take a moment and email us at info@firstcov.org. That's info@1stcov.org. And just let us know you're out there. And I'm telling you, as much detail as you can add in that email would be very informative. It is what we are doing in person. It would be better if you were able to come in person. But if you can't, that's what we need to find out. Please let us know what this has meant to you, what you would like to get out of it, anything you would like to talk about. Please send us an email at info@firstcov.org, because we would really love to hear from you. Thanks so much for being on this journey. It is a crazy time, but I believe in the redemptive power of God. And I hope and pray that I think something beautiful will emerge out of the layers of complexity that we find ourselves in this time. And I would just like to close us in prayer. Please pray with me. Creator God, help us to, through your Spirit, fly above all that's going on in our world so that we can have a very realistic assessment of the context that is going on. Lord, the fact that we are watching this and attending this means that we're interested in bringing the teachings of Christ into this world. Lord, that we want to bring in the teachings of how to love you, God, more and better, how to love our neighbor as ourselves. Lord, I pray as we still want to do this in this context, Lord, that we would have renewed hope, but that we would start with an understanding of what surrounds us. And so, Lord, I do pray for this time of conversation, this time of asking questions, of listening, and of wondering and of praying. Holy Spirit, reveal to us what you would have us do and who you would have us to be, according to your will and purposes. In Jesus' name we ask it. Amen. Amen.
Come gather round people wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept that it's soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. For the times they are a-changing. Come writers and critics who prophesy with your pen, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin. There's no telling who it's naming, for the loser now will later to win, for the time they are a-changing. Yes, they are. Come senators and congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall, for he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. There's a battle outside and it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changing. Come mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the way if you can lend a hand, for the times they are a-changing. Oh yes, they are. It is drawn, the curse it is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be the past. The order is rapidly fading. The first one now will later